Hey everyone, I am Joey. I'm the co-founder of Nook, and this is a product that we are super excited that we've now rolled out. This is multi-allocation, the ability for you to choose multiple sources and earn across them at the same time. So, starting with the homepage, we always want Nook to feel simple. We just want it to feel like a place where you can earn, and that will always be the focus, and I felt like we kept that true here on the dashboard, where you can see not just how much you have deposited, how much you have earned, your APY, but also the breakdown of your deposits into those sources. So the biggest, newest thing here when you open up the Nook app is going to be your allocation. So your allocation is broken out into three different sectors: USDC, Core, and Frontier. These three different sectors are basically three ways to segment your funds. So you're earning in one of these or two of these three sources. In USDC, you're not earning. So I'll just kind of go source by source, break down what this means. But first, I want to just give you a run through of the app. So that's the biggest change on the dashboard. The rest of the app architecture remains unchanged. You can still see your details, what you've earned, any bonuses you have, etc. You can still see your transactions and profile remain the same. So to break down the different categories, I want to go straight into this third tab, which is now the allocation tab, previously known as the sources tab. So within the allocation tab, you can see your APY across these different sources and what each one is earning. And so just taking a quick glance at mine, you can tell that I'm mostly into Frontier. I put most of my money into the Frontier sources, and I'll break down exactly what that means and which ones are in there, but I'm not really into Core, and I have a little bit of cash in USDC. Just a reminder, USDC is a stablecoin. It's the leading US based stablecoin with one-to-one redemptions for the US dollar. It has over $70 billion in deposits. And however, it does not earn, right? If your stablecoin is not in a lending market, you are not earning because there is no borrower borrowing that USDC. So there is no return on just earning in cash. So that's why the APY is zero. The two other sources are, or the two other categories are places where you'll see sources that earn: Core and Frontier. So if you tap into Core, you'll see a brief description about what Core is and the five different sources you have available to you in Core. They are generally on the lower end in terms of APY, but they're on the higher end in terms of number of deposits, number of depositors, and then also the score of each vault. So what I'm going to do is go into one of the sources, Gauntlet Prime V2, where I have a little bit of money, about $4, and just kind of give you the rundown of what you can expect from a Core source. So this page has remained unchanged. You can still see all the details that you have previously, the total number of deposits, the liquidity, the asset itself. And what makes this what we think a Core vault is a few things. One is just the overview stats, right? A very large vault with $85 million in deposits, $69 million in liquidity. So at any one point, if you have $69 million in there right now, you can withdraw it all at once. I don't think you do have $69 million to withdraw, but that basically signals like, hey, this is a very large pool, a very large money market for larger depositors to quickly move in and out. The other things I want to look at is the history, right? So it has a steady, consistent history in terms of the APY. It's also been around for a long time as a vault. Then it also has a blue chip curator. So Gauntlet is one of the two blue chip curators. The other would be Steakhouse, managing this vault. And last but not least is the vault score is high for this vault in all of the Core vaults in here. So what you're getting really is a selection of the larger vaults, more established by blue chip curators. However, they tend to be lower APY because there's a lot of depositors depositing into these vaults, right? Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. The answer to Core sources and Frontier sources is this is a categorization based on these general outlines. And yes, a categorization can change. So we can move a vault from Core to Frontier and vice versa, Frontier to Core, right? If we feel like a vault has been in Frontier for some time, it has a proven track record, it's grown in deposits, and it meets the Core criteria, we can then transfer into Core and vice versa, right? So some vaults will start very large, but over time they will shift. They will get smaller in deposits, smaller in terms of number of depositors, and then maybe they'll make some changes in terms of the market structure. So it makes sense then to potentially move a market from Core to Frontier. We've been internally testing it for months, so we haven't moved any vaults or sources from Core to Frontier or vice versa, but I think that's just helpful to think about in terms of a framing, right? We could move these as needed. Now let's go into Frontier. So as you can see, I have the majority of my deposits allocated to Frontier. I'm 99% in Frontier, and I want to break down what that means. So Frontier is a list of existing sources that we're going to be adding more to, as we give users the option to explore higher rates with smaller, more emerging sources. What I mean by emerging sources is a few things. One is they are smaller in terms of deposits and depositors, right? They might be newer, or they might just be a little bit more niche and nuanced in smaller markets on smaller chains. Two is the assets that users are lending against and that people are borrowing against are different in long tail. So it's not just these blue chip assets, and it's not necessarily seen by blue chip curators. You'll still see a lot of the curators that are in the core sources on these frontier sources. However, you'll see some new curators like RE7 and others as we add them in. So these are newer curators that do not have billions of dollars in deposits that they're curating. They are newer entrants to the scene. That's why we've labeled these sources frontier, and that's why you're going to see a higher APY. And so just like we talked about with core, we describe a little bit more about what goes into frontier, why are the yields typically higher, and what are the implications for withdrawing and investing with frontier. But in general, there's a reason we labeled it frontier, right? These are newer, these are sometimes a bit less established. And so therefore, it's really up to you if you want to put all of your money into these frontier sources. I think it really depends on what you're comfortable with and how you want to balance these out. One thing I want to call out is that's a core driver around why we built multi-allocation. So within this portfolio, you can see I have spread my deposits out into technically 5 different active sources. 2 of them I do not have money in. So I have anywhere between $3 into a new source that we're experimenting with, and then I have $28,000 into an existing source that we have now. So with multi-allocation, it's not just about dividing into core and frontier, it's about dividing within each different source. So I could put 100% of my money into the Steakhouse Reservoir source, or I could diversify across this as I've done here. That allows me to basically spread my investments across different sources, earn a mix of different rates across different assets. And so as different sources go up and down, I can diversify in terms of distribution across different sources, but also diversify my rate of return. Here, you do not have automated rebalancing in the frontier source or the core sources. When rates change, if you want to access those rates, you will have to go in and transfer funds into that source. We've still kept it free, super easy, and very short in terms of time duration, but it's not automated anymore. The reason for that is if you diversify across different sources, so if you're $28,000 here, $4,000 here, $14,000 here, how do we know where to automatically rebalance? The rules get very tricky, the logic gets very intense, and honestly, it did not make a product that made sense at the end of the day. And so we're pushing towards this direction of you selecting the sources while we make moving of sources easily. In the future, we do want to bring automated rebalancing back. Right now, we figured it was more important based on customer feedback to move towards this breakdown of more sources in allocation than keep in automated rebalancing. So with that, I do want to go into what it looks like to move funds from one source to another. So in this Steakhouse High Yield Vault, there's a 5.3% APY. I can see the total deposits. I can see the liquidity. If I want to allocate into it, I accept the disclaimers per usual, and I'm shown this allocation screen. So I'm choosing where I want to move funds from into this source. So if I have $500 in USDC, I can go ahead and put 50 of that. It will reflect that I'm still 99% in Frontier, and then I can start the reallocation. So this is simply a transfer from source A, which was USDC, to source B, right? So it's going across the base network in terms of going from USDC into this new source, and it's remaining in USDC and will be deposited as USDC. So this should only take a matter of seconds, and then when I go back into my sources, I will see that I have now added this $50 to Steakhouse High Yield. So therefore, I'm able to say, hey, take this $500 and put it to work in the source that I select. So I think this gives a good overview of what we've built and how you can allocate. But I want to talk about what we have in mind and where we want to go. So one, I did address the lack of rebalancing overnight, the automated rebalancing. We did remove that feature. I don't think it's gone forever. We did hear the feedback of this is already missed, but we do think that we want to make a balance of control and diversification versus reallocation every night into every source. I think that was becoming untenable. And so we're working on a way to bring this back. I think a second piece of feedback that we've heard very clear is there's basically two ways to move funds. There's the deposit and withdraw here. So that's where you withdraw from a source like the Stakehouse High Yield I just went into. And then if you deposit, that goes into USDC. We're working on simplifying this so it's not two completely different flows in terms of depositing, withdrawals, and then allocation here. And then the third kind of piece of feedback is just a bit more nuance on the interactions themselves, right? So we've heard really good feedback around, hey, when I'm transferring from one source to another, I'm allocating into a new source. We are working on that versus just a dollar amount. We've also heard some really good details around, can I select the existing source I want to move from to, and then allocate the new source? That's great feedback as well. So there's definitely some paper cuts, as I would call them, throughout the flow in terms of additional steps you have to take, maybe a bit more confusing as usual, but we think the trade-off here is worth it in terms of more control and this allocation that you get. So I think the main things to remember, again, Nook is a place for you to earn across different markets. You've always been able to choose which markets you earn from. However, now you can choose to earn across multiple markets. So Cash with USDC, Core, and Frontier, you're able to transfer from any one of those three to another. And we're excited to get this into everyone's hands and get your feedback. So if you have any feedback for me, again, I'm Joey. I'm the co-founder of Nook. Please email us in the team at team@nookapp.xyz. And again, we really appreciate it and hope to get your feedback soon. Thanks for listening.